Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
Right, so good to be with all of you. Those of you came in a little late, just letting you know. I have COVID, so it's been a bit of low energy tonight. So just want to give you a heads up. But feel up to this, so I'm glad we get to engage in the Dharma. All right, well, we have been going through this book, Samsara, Nirvana, Buddha Nature. Been working on the 6 primary afflictions, becoming aware of them, seeing how they impact our lives. And, we've done attachment, anger, arrogance, and the section right now is on ignorance, misunderstanding. And the book is very, very detailed. So we get kind of in the weeds. So I was looking at it thinking, maybe we'll take a different approach there. Misunderstanding. Because the point of all this is not to have a lot of knowledge. That doesn't really change our lives much, but can we make something practical in our own lives? And how do we do that? And so I was thinking about this section, and I wanted to bring it into the context of the 3 marks of existence. Let's see if my mind works tonight. 3 marks of existence. And basically, here's the whole issue. Here's reality, and here's how we perceive reality. And the more that they're misaligned, the more suffering arises, the more afflictions arise. So at the core of all this is always based in misunderstanding. We can, take it from just a Western psychological view. You can see all the kinds of thinking errors and mental projections and stress and worry and fears that people have about what may or may not happen, or ruminate on what did happen. And, no need to be a Buddhist for that. We could see that the vast majority of all of our mental emotional suffering is just based on our mind, not what's actually happening. And so there's a huge area of therapy dedicated to addressing thinking errors, cognitive distortions, trying to tame the mind, bring it back to what's actually happening. And so I think we can all experience some of that. We've had lots of worries and fears that never happened. We had lots of joys that weren't as fulfilling as we hoped. We've accomplished huge amounts of things in our lives that we feel good about, and yet we can feel not so good today, even though we've accomplished all this. Instead of cultivating a sense of contentment for the life we have, we can be looking outside for something to make us a little better, right? Well, that's just this mental activity and desire, and then really thinking that if we had this, we'd be happy. If we didn't have that, we'd be happy. And, just a vicious cycle. So one of the, good, I think, foundational understandings is, well, let's look at 3 marks of existence, and then maybe we can notice how we get out of alignment with that. And then we'll notice all these other afflictions rise. And, the first one is simply impermanence. Everything, everyone is impermanent. Every person you meet, every building you enter, every, thing that we see and do is impermanent. Nothing is stagnant. Nothing is permanent. So for those of you who acted up in school, you don't have to worry about it being on your permanent record. You can rejoice. It's doesn't really exist. Yeah. You guys remember that little threat? Let's go down on your permanent record. Yeah. So, well, then that, as we sit here and think about impermanence, we're changing, others are changing, the towns we live in change, the jobs that we have change, and our partners change, right? And that's pretty unfair because we got them at this particular spot, and we think we can just bubble wrap them and stay that way. That'd be good, but then they change, and we change. And think about how much suffering comes in your life by trying to make things permanent that aren't permanent. Right, that whole little fantasy, right? Get that stable job, get that house, get that relationship, whatever that thing is, and then we're gonna be okay. And then we kind of notice, well, jobs change, jobs come and go, people, friendships change, they come and go. We kind of notice that job stability, that's kind of a pretty rare thing, right? We didn't expect COVID, right? A little bit of a change there. That changed the world in a huge way. Nobody saw that coming in. And yet we will try to preserve, we will, not want things to change. And out of that, we're going to get resentful, we're going to get angry, we're going to get frustrated, we're going to get sad. Just simply not recognizing things change. Everything's changing all the time. Now, what if I recognize that things change? How much suffering would that eliminate? You start to realize that this is a new day. We'll come again. Here's the environment I get to live in, and can I flow with the different news that I get? I lost a job. A lot of people get worried about that. Then you get a new job. We forget I needed a job before I got that last job. And there's new potentials available that we don't know who's going to call you tomorrow, that we don't know who we get to meet, that things are changing all the time, things are impermanent. And there's an incredible amount of freedom there and a lot less suffering. Matter of fact, if we recognize how impermanent things are, there's a lot of potential for joy in really savoring the day that does exist. Right? Here's a day that's not going to come again. Let me be fully present for it. Let me feel alive today. That this day, I don't know if I'll be here tomorrow. I don't know if you'll be here tomorrow. So while we are here, let's fully live life. It's one of the sort of foundational things that is taught in Buddhism, is just impermanence and death. It's inevitable, and yet people don't want to talk about it or think about it. But there's a real freedom in recognizing that death is certain, the time of death is uncertain. So here's the day that will come again. Don't know how many I have. Do I want to go to bed with resentment and frustration and worry or fear? Do I want to feel good about how I showed up today? And then there's something I can savor about this day and approach it with, sacred. Stay sacred. Will never come again. A friend of mine has that written on her refrigerator thing. And wow, what a different attitude I might have. We don't think our friends should change. We don't think our relationships should change. We don't think our jobs should change. We don't think, all these traditions we have should change. And our little towns, they change. Everybody gets all upset about this. We got a group in Carbon now, a lot of people in Carbon. Well, it's not the same as it used to be. Yeah, it changes. And we kind of get like, wow, I want it to be the way it was. So that's first mark of existence, and the more that we can recognize impermanence and change, we can go with okay, what's the new reality? And then we get to deal with one of the most liberating things that we can ever cultivate in life, is that's acceptance. Acceptance is not passive. Acceptance is not counting down. Acceptance is choosing to live in reality. Okay, this is the new reality. How do we grow? How do we make it the best that we got? How do we engage in this? And lack of acceptance is, I don't want to be like this. I don't think it should be like this. This shouldn't have happened. And now we have a lot of frustration, anger, fear, resentment. Instead of, once I go to acceptance, well, can I improve it or not? What do I do now? And so this much, much more liberating way of living. And acceptance has nothing to do with approval. It doesn't mean we like it. It doesn't mean we think it's the way it ought to be. It means, okay, well, that's the way it is. What can we do about it? And sometimes the answer is nothing. Sometimes there is something. But the longer it takes for me to move into acceptance, the greater my sense of affliction and rumination. So acceptance is really nothing more than choosing to live in reality, and then we can be empowered, no longer be a victim. Really wonderful antidote. So that's impermanence. And then the other mark of existence is that all this, they call it composite phenomena, but that's basically the world we live in, the experiences we have, things we have, people we get to see and be around. That none of those things, people, jobs, things that we acquire, accomplishments, none of those will provide you with lasting happiness and well-being. And it just can't. That just pulls the rug out, doesn't it? Man, I worked so hard to make this happen. I have this visualization sometimes. I just think like people should carry around like a whole bunch of plaques of everything they've accomplished. So everybody knows who they are and what they've done, like, don't you know? We're really insecure about stuff. And so sometimes we need all these things. But the big problem is in our life is we have a belief that if I get this thing, I'm going to be happy. If I get this relationship, I'm going to be happy. If I get this job, I'm going to be happy, and all these things. And totally miss the point that happiness lasts, well, how long does it last? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, sometimes a day, a really good one, right? And then we can still be subject to feeling insecure, worried, fearful. And then we got to protect, the things that we have, and we stress about that. And we put all of our energy into these things that we collect and this world we build because it'll make us happy. We'll live the American dream, good life, right? White picket fences. You don't hear that much anymore, do you? The whole white picket fence thing. But yeah, you get that, and then we'll be happy. And then we attach to it, and we covered that in attachment. And then attachment isn't just, I really want this. Attachments, I really want it to avoid certain things as well. And I keep trying to get all these people to be the way I would like them to be. I try get my things in my life to be the way I want them to be. I try to live in the place that I think will make me happy, and try to believe, we do, that, these are the source of my happiness. And, the confusion is the difference between just a momentary feeling of happiness, of pleasure, and a real sense of genuine happiness, of self-worth, of value, of meaning, of purpose. And that's never going to come from those external things. So as we, doesn't mean we shouldn't get them and you can't enjoy them, you know, that's wonderful. But just know their limitations. And really recognize it's not the stuff we get, it's how we earned it, right? It's how we got that stuff. It's what we use that stuff for, what's meaningful and purposeful, right? We got a house, you know, what do we do in that house? If we have friends, how do we treat our friends? How do we show up in those relationships? It's vacation, you know, how do we show up on that vacation? What makes that vacation meaningful? And so that has a lot more to do with us and our attitudes, our motivations, and then there's a whole different way of cultivating these wonderful experiences and cultivate in a way that's really meaningful, productive, and helps us cultivate a sense of just deep value, purpose, and meaning. And that's going to be the inner part, much more sustainable. But you can note in your life how many things went wrong, didn't go the way you wanted, lost something, how much pain came out of that, attachments to people and suffering that comes around that. So we have impermanence, we have the external view of our world and sources of happiness and suffering. And then the last one is just a real misunderstanding of self. And that's kind of the cornerstone of all this, is this misunderstanding of self. As we all have a pretty strong feeling about our identity and who we are and what kind of person we are, and we feel very much like we exist in a particular way, very independent, and you know, that's the core of it all. Is, you know, there's nothing independent about us, right? And everything about us is also changing and interdependent. And even I always get fascinated when people say I created this or that, and I sit there and think, I don't think I've created anything ever. You know, if I've written anything, it's because someone taught me how to read and write. It's any knowledge I have was given to me by others. Any thing that I do in life is only made possible by others. The food I eat, the clothes I wear, the things I get to learn about, and you know, every aspect of my life is because of others and arises only in dependence upon them, and plants and animals and vegetation that we have, so forth. So we exist in a very interdependent way, but we feel independent. And then we kind of lock ourselves into this prison of who we are and what my traumas are and what my feelings are and the kind of person I am, this personality that I identify with. And I don't recognize that all that is changeable all the time. And a lot of the attitudes you have today you didn't used to have. Some of the ones that you're developing today might be new or different, that your body is changing, and you know, everything about your this thing that we say we are. You know, am I a patient person or impatient person? And then you go, okay, well, have you ever been patient? Yeah, I've been patient. Okay, so maybe you're not an impatient person, but a person who's been impatient sometimes, right? And but we lock on to certain things as though that's who we are. And then we get imprisoned with those beliefs and this, you know, vision of ourselves that we carry around day to day, and don't realize that, you know, changeable. And I was just in a session earlier with some therapists. We're doing a course, and just the idea of like negative self-talk and how strong it is, and how, you know, deeply embedded it is, and you know, we can be really hard on ourselves. And you know what the process of change is around that. that I can start identifying that for any one thing I do wrong, I do 100 things well. I can start identifying, some of the things that I am good at, some things that I've done well. And even one of them, I said, I bet you're a good student. And she smiled and says, yeah, I was an excellent student, but I'm a perfectionist. So you see what happened there? Instead of just saying, yeah, I was a very good student, then we bring in a negative aspect. Yeah, but I'm a perfectionist. And so, we have this habits sometimes of a critical voice, the way that we talk about ourselves, the way that we think of ourselves, and don't realize that all that's changeable. All of that is changeable. That I can start bringing to mind in reality the good that I do, celebrating that, feeling good about the things I do well, and recognize that it's always in dependence upon others. I'm a part of something I'm not separate from, and that everything that's happening, is providing me opportunities to grow, to learn, to be uh, adapting to life in a way that's meaningful and purposeful, joyful. But to get that mind takes a long time, right? It's not okay. Got this little lesson here, great. I'm gonna start having this pat on the back. John's a good guy. We're gonna nail it. No more critical self-talk. That's ridiculous. And it takes a practice, because these views about ourselves, the way that we attend to ourselves, the issues that we label ourselves with, pretty ingrained, pretty well ingrained. So the journey then becomes, what if I recognize that I am arising every moment in dependence upon the events, the circumstances in my life, the people around me, and that everything I do has meaning and purpose, and I'm interconnected, I'm not separate. And, little things I do make a difference in the world. Very little things that I do make a difference in the world. How I attend to someone who's struggling, you guys hear me say all the time that stopping at a stop sign makes the world a safer place. That, these things that happen that we do make a difference, and to recognize I'm a part of something instead of independent from. And when you look at all spiritual traditions, you're going to see that they're all trying to remove that sense of independence, that ego, right? We lessen the ego. Spirituality, oftentimes people just talk about being connected, right? Connected to something. And so different spiritual paths have different ways of doing that. But you're going to notice the more we become independent, self-centered, independent, the more suffering we'll have. The more I think about me, the more pain I'm going to have. Like this person doing something I like, this person doing something I don't like. I become all I think about, which is that great line. I'm not much, but I'm all I think about, right? And then I engage the whole world by whether they're giving me some pleasure or not. And a lot of suffering, and not recognizing that you're much more than how you're showing up. And then to take it a deeper level is that you, beneath your consciousness, but beneath this view of self, is a consciousness that can observe all this and can guide. Talk about Buddha nature, where we start to recognize that, when I say I'm only human, it's nothing but a self-imposed limitation. That there's a deep well of wisdom that is accessible and available. And, all of Buddhism is going towards that. To identify, so they say the core of the problem is identifying me and mine with that which is not me and mine. My stuff, my body, my this, my that. We didn't create our body. We didn't, when we go through everything that we've ever done, me and mine. And then it's them and theirs, and now there's a big struggle. Instead of, well, how about this is all unfolding, and the fact that bees pollinate flowers, has a lot to do with why we're alive today. And that, we exist in dependence upon this much bigger thing that's unfolding. And within it, is it all available for us to know ourselves? And that was the Buddha's big epiphany, was that you can actually recognize and know your ultimate nature and not be a prisoner of the thoughts, the feelings, the fears, and the identity that we carry with us. And on a very practical way, even if we're not at that point, what I find really wonderful is that the process is the same, whether you identify as just a human being who is a materialist or scientific thing that doesn't believe in anything beyond this life. You'll still find that your mental emotional suffering is coming from identifying, yourself as independent and separate, and gauging the world on that, and not recognizing from even a scientific point of view that you arise in dependence upon all these things, and you can become a lot happier. That things like are interdependent, they're impermanent. That these three marks of existence work because they're true. I mean, that's just the nature of existence. And in those three marks of existence have nothing to do with the Buddhist path. It's just, these are marks of existence. And the more that we act in ways that are discordant with reality, the more mental emotional suffering we'll have. The more we act in ways that accord with reality, the less mental emotional suffering we'll have. Less afflictions arise. And there's nothing Buddhist about any of that. It's actually, a lot of it's called cognitive behavioral therapy today. And as you unpack that and we start to apply these things and start noticing the difference, we could maybe make some choices more with an understanding of the true source of happiness, which is our ethics and our values, doing things that we feel good about, and that we'll feel good about tomorrow, doing the next healthy thing that we feel good about, without the attachment to how it turns out, because therein lies the whole struggle. I want it to be like this, and it's okay to want it to be like that. We strive for things, but whether it turns out like that or not isn't going to create the lasting happiness we seek. And the only way to get that realization is to notice it. We can talk about it a lot, and but when you start actually, mindfully noting stress and all the things that arise, we'll notice our attachment, we'll notice our belief system. And then if we keep track daily, we'll kind of notice what you're worked up about last week isn't a thing today. And that you could have accomplished a lot of things and be suffering today. And that you'll notice these ups and downs in our lives, but where the stability, the peace of mind, the well-being is always going to come from, as Buddhism would say, our ethics and our values. And that's really the source of happiness and well-being. So I'm going to pause there, covered those three, and see if anyone has any discussion questions, comments, insights, epiphanies. Greta.
Hey, good to hear you. Thank you. What came up for me when I was listening to you talk, like I actually have it on my cell phone. I have for a long time. It says everything changes. Just to remind myself that everything I think is like present right now is going to change, whatever. Anyway, I think there's like some cognitive dissonance that happens with this, and you kind of talked about that, like our part of us like you can intellectually know that things are impermanent, right? And grasp the concept, but I think there's like a lag. And you talked about like these things are deeply embedded in you, it's kind of like a practice, like it happens over time. And I guess like I get really confused. It's like I think I fully understand like impermanence, right? But I'm having like this other response that feels very like attached involuntarily. It feels involuntary, but you're saying you have a choice. So I'm wondering what your perspective is on that experience.
Yeah. So that's the same sort of piece of how ingrained things are. Certain aspects of ourselves are resistant to change. And we'll grab onto things. This person I was talking to today was mentioning, and they're a therapist, that that they'll know this stuff is good for them, but there's a huge resistance to do anything about it, right? Because that's the norm, that's the safety, that's what we're used to, that's what we're comfortable with. And the big challenge with all of this is knowing this doesn't change your life, as you pointed out. Applying it day in and day out slowly and methodically unfolds. And that's why they call it a path. It's something that, slowly and methodically it unfolds. So, for example, I am willing to bet that how you are today is significantly improved to how you were 2 years ago. Right? That's, I think, our big cognitive dissonance is we don't recognize how far we've come. We keep comparing how I'm feeling today with where I think I should be.
Like enlightened.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I get all this impermanence, compassion, all that, and we don't recognize, wow, I've been, doing some inner work for a long time, and I am significantly better than I used to be. And therein lies evidence that says, okay, if I keep doing these things that have been improving, I'll continue to improve. But it's a slower process than we all want, And the resistance lessens. I think the thing that I could encourage everyone to do, which is probably one of the hardest things to do, is to celebrate the good you do. It's so antithetical to us to celebrate the good we do. It makes you feel arrogant or prideful or blah, blah, blah. But for yourself to acknowledge your growth, for yourself to acknowledge the good things that you've done, for you to, like I mentioned to this woman, you're a good student, right? Yeah, she goes, yeah, I was a great student, but I'm a perfectionist. And why don't we just leave it? Yeah, I was a great student. I worked hard. And so when we do things we feel good, to take a moment and allow a little bit of a reward there, allow yourself to feel good about the good you do. And we're just not good at that. Right. And that's just Western culture. And, it's not bragging. It's not any of those things. It's worthiness. It's value. It's recognizing the process and validating, a journey that's evidence-based in that way. And then if we have more reward around the good that we do, then we're more likely to want to do it because reward's going to be a prime motivator. And then our practice, gets more and more rewarding. Yeah. I've mentioned a few times that, there's a monk in Australia who every time he finishes meditating, he takes a moment and asks himself, do I feel better that I did that? And he says the answer's always been yeah. So it makes me want to do it again. Well, even if it was a sucky meditation, right? It's like I bucked up, I did it. I sat there. Mine was all over the place, but I did it.
Hi, John. It's Natasha. Can you
Hey,
hear me?
Natasha. Yeah.
Hi. I also have COVID.
Oh, wow. All right.
Um, I was curious about what you just said there about, sort of asking yourself, do I feel better now that I've done my meditation? I was talking about impermanence. For me, the embodiment of impermanence is like, well, that meditation's over, thank God. Like that's been my experience of late. And when the bell goes off, it's like hallelujah.
Right.
And I don't feel if I were to ask myself that question, do I feel better? There's something inside me that would say no, it didn't. And um I recognize, it's like I think Greta was saying, like I intellectually recognize, all right, this is impermanence. This will be over. That even in meditation posture and taking the meditation posture is impermanent. But what I'm wondering is how to, like, first of all, that do I feel better? Like I'm trying to cultivate joy in my meditation. And I'm also wondering how that works with sort of recognizing how meditation is. I think I know how it's supposed to help me recognize impermanence, but I would like to hear more from you about that.
Yeah. And just to clarify, the question after meditation isn't, do I feel better? It's,
Oh,
do I feel good that I've done that? Like that I
oh,
stuck it out, right? That it was a
okay.
healthy thing, that I feel like, valuable that I did. Even if it sucked, I did it,
Okay.
Yeah.
A little pat on your back just for
Yeah.
sticking it out. Okay,
Yeah.
I could
Right.
do that.
Because it's pretty easy to do things we like. There's,
Yeah.
when we're struggling with stuff and we do it anyway, that's the pat on the back, right?
Okay.
And yeah, and there might be times where you feel better and so forth, but really that question is, how do you feel about yourself that you've done it, right? That I did that. And then there's different meditations that do different things, right? So like we did a shamatha practice before this, we focused on the breath. And what that essentially does, its whole purpose is to tame the mind, right? So the mind's active and it's, dragging us around, it's got all that. And if I do this consistently over time, I will notice when, if I'm on the breath and I notice I'm not, that's the magic moment, because now I have a choice. I'm mindful. So over time, doing this one specific practice, I'm developing a greater degree of attention, but I'm also noticing my mindfulness, like that you'll never remember leaving the breath, right? You'll be on the breath, and when you notice your mind, you will have never remembered leaving the breath. Your mind just went off on its own. And then you got the mindfulness. I know where my mind is. That's the magic moment. In between, that's all unawareness. Mind left the breath, don't know what was happening. It started developing whatever it was thinking about. And at some point, I caught myself. And so then we go, okay, now I have choice. I can let go of that and come back to the breath. Right now, I'm developing a muscle that gives me choice. So if I want to develop a practice where, I want some more joy in my life, I can start noticing joy. Then we can bring that same level of attention, to the birds that we see as we're walking down the street here. I've been noticing them lately. And I don't know if you've ever petted Ollie, who's a block up from us in that little fenced area, little shaggy dog. Gave him a little treat the other day. And, don't go by him without petting him. And then what we're able to do is direct our attention to the things that can be joyful and have some more choice about that to soak it in, Our mind will take us to different places unless we tame it. So this specific practice would then, now I want to use that muscle to have a specific intention. Today, I'm working on joy. I want to notice, the wonder of the world today. And I'm going to remind myself so many times a day about that. And that's where the effort is set an appointment, with yourself, having a little alarm go off, look around, and notice something and do it on purpose, consciously. And the wonder of just the little place we live in. I know this because she's a neighbor of mine. That's how I can mention Ollie, the dog. And so we have these opportunities to start consciously choosing what we attend to. And but if I just do a practice in the morning, work my way through it, thank God it's over, and then I'm gonna go endure today. It's good to in the morning start with that wonderful practice of here's a day that's never going to come again in my life. Look at the opportunities that we have. Let's cultivate some contentment and gratitude, and let me start looking at others in my neighborhood and the things that we do, and see the wonder in it consciously, and let that unfold. But again, it's a practice. I need to make appointments with myself, bring my mind back, and take some time for that. And then I always tell people, if you haven't skipped lately, you should try that. I mean, when's the last time you skipped? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's great. I love
Yeah.
skipping.
Yeah. It is really hard to take yourself seriously when you're skipping.
I'll skip by your house.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah. That really changes the whole mind-body thing. Yeah. All right, Martha.
Well, I'm really I got a sense of what is being said and what Greta was talking about also, but that this and what you said, John, about that there's that moment when I go, oh gosh, yeah, my mind was out, doing a job or making a list or doing something. But there's this other kind of in between state that I seem to find myself in, which is on the breath, and maybe I'll be counting, and maybe I'm on number 4. And then there's something in my thinking that says, wow, I've got 4 breaths under my, I've just accomplished 4 breaths, and I'm not off on something, but it's like this split kind of awareness of that I'm still breathing. And then I think, well, no, that doesn't count. You have lost your concentration or your focus of my object. And that happens a fair amount too for me. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there's these sort of 2 aspects of practice of the meditation. One's called introspection, and that's the monitoring that you're either on the breath or not, which is different than just being focused, right?
Yes.
So I'm focused on the breath, but there's this introspection that we often need to use a lot to notice when we're off and to kind of bring us back, and that element comes up. And I think we all can relate to what you said. I don't know if you saw people laugh, but hey man, 10 breaths, woo, and then you're like, oh wait, I'm supposed to be back to this. And that's cool. It's normal, not a big deal. And but you'll also notice as you do it is you'll have an ability to be with the breath and have some different sort of thoughts. You haven't totally lost the breath, but you're starting to have some other thoughts and things, and they call that gross attention, as opposed, so you haven't lost it, and that's good. You still have your toe, right, in the practice, right? The toe's still in the water, right? And your mind's starting to wander, but you haven't lost the breath. That's just gross attention, and that's good. That's where we start. So you'll notice that you can be doing the breath for a bit and even start to have some thoughts or some things, but you haven't exactly lost the breath yet. And that's normal. That's just gross. And what happens is over time, we just refine it, and we get a more refined attention. And so as long as you haven't lost a breath, even if you're having some other thoughts or some introspection show up, you're doing great. I mean, that's huge progress. And then, then there's all those other things that we can have about am I aware of the breath, or am I thinking about the breath, or am I, all those little things that'll pop up, which is, pretty normal. And we just kind of let go and come back and simply try to be aware of it. But yeah, very normal, but it's all progress. What you're describing is progress.
I have a
And
sort of a comment, I guess. Thank you for describing what gross attention, like that thing that you just described. I've been wondering about it. And what happens for me is I'm counting and I'm, aiming for 10, which I never get to, because when I get to the gross attention, I start over. So, and my question is, should I or shouldn't I start over? But it doesn't even really matter, because the whole point is to just be with the breath. It doesn't matter what number I get to, but I want to get to 10. So
yeah. And, if you haven't lost the breath entirely, then, you can keep counting.
okay.
Yeah. It's when you totally have lost the breath and you're off into another tangent, that's when you go back to zero.
What I've noticed is I'll get to that gross attention place, and then I'll start wondering if I should start over, and then I lose my attention. So maybe now I'll be able to just stay.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. It's good. All right. Is it Keith or Kurt? One of you guys.
It's me this time. I noticing something. I've been noticing something recently. I've been sitting with you for 3 years now, and I'm finally getting to the point where the conversation today is super relevant for me, because I'm noticing everybody asks a question and it's like, that's what I was going to ask. But one thing I'm noticing is that my brain is complicit in not doing this, right? It doesn't like it. And I'll be going along and I'll be counting and I'll be, grossly patting myself on the back for staying on my breath. And then all of a sudden, and it's really vivid visions will just like smack me, and they're weird, and I mean, I have almost a startle response to them. I don't know if that's normal or not, but it's no, Keith's shaking his head. No, that's really abnormal. You're weird.
Yeah. No, it's very normal. When you do a shamatha practice, especially over a period of time, what you're doing is you're dredging your psyche. So a bunch of stuff just pops up.
Yeah. But it's like cats riding bicycles. It's like weird stuff. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to it.
Right. Maybe I'll share with you nyams, which are the authentic sort of things that happen in meditation like this, and it'll make cats riding bikes look normal. All right, and because you're just dredging a psyche, and all kinds of just stuff comes up, and it's good. That's what you want to do. You want to dredge the psyche. Things will come up, and so if people with long-term practice over a period of time, when you're really just focused and there, these the psyche gets dredged, things come up and they just go, and we just don't follow them. And it's really healthy. It's signs of progress.
Well, good. That's good to hear. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, this is Megan. So I can relate to dredging, to cats, to all kinds of things we're talking about tonight. And I mentioned that because I'm here in Chicago helping my mom with her cancer. And I'm taking care of her 2 cats. But the interesting thing that I really appreciate you mentioning, John, is that today, if I look back from the minute I woke up, everyone that I've interacted with, so the 2 cats first at 4 a.m., they love to wake up early. Man, they love to wake up early. Then I went down and saw the doorman at the building of my mom's condo. I got in an Uber and met the Uber driver. I arrived at the hospital and met all kinds of folks, you know, to get through all the stuff to get up to my mom's room. The nurses, the attendants, the security guards, everyone. Wow, so many interactions. And I was so intent today on just recognizing everyone. And what a difference that made. I didn't think I'd get so emotional. But what a wonderful difference that made to just be present with everyone, from when I went to go out to get a coffee, when I came back in and there was an oncologist, a palliative care person, a hospice person. Man, I've had so many interactions, and it just, what I pulled out of that was that we are so interdependent. And how beautiful is that? Even though it's not easy. And I appreciate you all being here.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a good note to wrap up on this wonderful opportunity, interdependence and impermanence. All right, let's go ahead and dedicate the merit that we have already cultivated from our time together. Those who'd care to, that is. It's nice to take a moment to recognize a lot of things we could have done on a Wednesday evening, and here we are coming together, supporting each other, and cultivating qualities for lasting, genuine happiness and well-being, eliminating suffering, being of benefit to others, living in ways that are meaningful and productive for ourselves and others. Great deal of merit here. So let's dedicate this merit for the benefit of all sentient beings and for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may ultimately liberate ourselves from these sufferings and be of greatest benefit to all. And if you'd care to, you can join me in the dedication. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha.